First meeting of the year.
Good morning.
Seems like a year's passed already, right? First order of business is the adoption of the January 17, 2019 Borough Board meeting agenda. Do we have a motion? So second? We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none. It passes. Now we go to the adoption of the December 20th, 2018 Borough Board meeting minutes. You've all received them, I think, earlier in the week or late last week. Any changes to the minutes? No? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So move. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. I believe, do we have the representatives from the Department of Education here? Yes, okay, excellent. Okay, so you have a presentation for us this morning, right?
Yes, is it on the...
I'm not sure, is it? Did you?
If not, I can just forward it.
Brian? Oh, great.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's this one. My apologies.
While it's going up, good morning, my name is Paula DeCock. I work at the Department of Education in the Office of Family and Community Empowerment. I'm just going to talk to you, I guess all of you are community board members?
Community board chairs.
Your chairs, I guess so your chairs are, is anyone here who's on the education committee of any of the community boards? Okay, just chairs, okay. So, basically what, oh, it's going up. So, as you may know, and I know there's a lot of, there's some people who are on community boards who have been on community education councils and vice versa. 2019 is an election year for the community education councils. So you may or may not yourselves be eligible or interested because by and large, for the election, the requirements are to be a parent in a New York City public school. So you may or may not have children, you may or may not be interested in the position, even if you have children, but because it's a pretty heavy commitment for the community boards, and to add another volunteer commitment is can be quite heavy. However, you may know people may come to your meetings who are interested in these positions. And we would like to be able to get the word out about running for them. Also, there are on each board, on each council, there are 2 appointed positions for the borough president. So the borough president in Manhattan, there are 6 community education councils, and the borough president appoints 2 members to each of them. So if you know, and those do not have to be parents in public school. So, okay, thank you. So if you know someone who's interested in any of these positions, we would like we would like to get the word out.
Is there some place where people can go to get more information?
Yes, it's well, it's on the DOE website, and it's now the DOE website has changed. It's now schools.nyc.gov. It used to be something else. But I think now it's on the home page. And we're kind of limited by state laws to what we can do. So in January, we have to go out. These positions, as you may know, these community education councils succeeded the school boards, the local school boards. They have many fewer powers than the school boards used to have, including they don't really have power over school budgets, over the hiring and firing of superintendents or anything like that. But, so anyway, these are part of mayoral control, which, as you may know, is being debated now because it expires. Mayoral control is a sunset law. It expires every few years. The first one expired in 2009. Bloomberg got 6 years. Yeah, because then expired in 2015, then in 2016, and now the next expiration date is June of 2019. So there are 32 community education councils with, again, large advisory powers. The one power that they do have, however, is over zoning lines. And this, if you live particularly in a gentrified neighborhood or in neighborhoods that are rapidly growing, there's a lot of interest and a lot of controversy over school zoning lines. I live in Park Slope. That's always a subject of great drama because, as we all know, schools and property values are intimately connected. School lines. The other power that they do have is recommending capital improvements to schools for inclusion in the amendments to the capital plan. That's, eventually this. It's not a direct power. In other words, if a council recommends that a school have a new gym, it's not going to appear next year. It sort of percolates out to over several years sometimes. What other powers do they have? They don't really have powers over curriculum anymore. I remember vaguely in the 90s with the old school boards that there was a great deal of drama over the rainbow curriculum. Some school boards in Queens blocked it. They do not have that kind of power anymore. Mostly their powers. But they also do hold town halls with the chancellor. Now they're invited to all the town halls with the chancellor and the mayor. So there's a lot of, it's basically a bully pulpit in many ways, except for those two actual powers. Now, the 4 citywide councils were added later. The citywide council on high schools. Now, high schools are sort of the stepchild of any system, in part because they're not local. High schools are citywide. So it's, they belong to no one in particular. So, and there's been a lot of drama over co-locations. High schools are often large and often occupy very, very large buildings. They used to be very large. And when smaller schools were created, that created the opportunity for several schools to be housed in one building, including other elementary schools sometimes, district elementary schools, they're not so much, but charter schools. And that's what is created even in Manhattan, but in other boroughs as well. A lot of controversy over the housing of charter schools. Citywide Council of Special Education, English Language Learners, and District 75. These councils don't really have, they have just advisory powers, and their main power is to do an annual report on how the Department of Education serves their respective population.
Excuse me, what's District 675?
District 75 is a citywide, basically almost like a chancellor. It's a citywide district that serves students with severe disabilities. They require special services. Most students with disabilities are actually within regular districts. They have special programs. That's what this council does. But 75 is a special district with its own superintendent. Oops. How do we display it?
I think on the side.
Oh. Doesn't seem to do anything. I pressed all the buttons.
Oh,
It's easier to see it. I mean, I could talk off the top of my head because I've done this presentation many times, but it's easier to see than this. So there are 398 total seats. So every 2 years, the Department of Education goes into high gear, and we, specifically my office, goes into high gear. We run this election for 325 seats. The difference between those two is the appointed positions that I talked about. For the community education councils, it's a borough president. All 5 borough presidents appoint to those councils, whereas for the citywide councils, the public advocate appoints members. There are no term limits. This is an interesting quirk in the law. The law is actually oddly written, including no term limits for parent members and public advocate appointees. No real reason why there should be 2 two-year terms for the borough president appointees, but that's how they write the laws here in New York. Who elects the council members? Parent members are elected by selectors. So it's not a general election the way it used to be for the school boards. It's the PA president, the PLPTA president of president, recording secretary, and treasurer of every school in the city. Every school in the district for community education councils, every school in the borough for citywide council and high school. Anyway, this is too much in the weeds for you. I just wanted to give you an idea of how complicated this all is and how many steps we have to go through. We have to find all of the selectors. It's kind of a complicated election. So it's not just about finding, about getting candidates. The election is also about getting selectors to vote. Now, if you are in school, if you're a PTA member, why am I voting for this? It's a kind of a, it's a bit of a lift. That's why we go out and we try to, get people to understand that these people, that these councils are not just, they're not just elected by everybody. We really need schools to get interested and vote for them. Because as you know, it's not just generally in elections, it's not just about candidates, it's also about voters. And that's a lot of what we're going to be doing next few months.
Can you just
Yes.
move it?
Okay. So if you have questions, just interrupt me. I don't really need to. Again, this is how they're constituted. 9 elected parents are current pre-K through 8th grade students in public non-charter schools. So these are specifically geared to public school students. These councils are for public school students. They're not really for charter schools or private schools. However, and then including a parent of an ELL student, again, the law was written many years ago, so they talked about English language learners. We talk about different programs, but it's basically, there is an effort to have representation from special education parents or students in special education and parents of English language learners, and then the 2 members. The Citywide Council on High Schools is very complicated because it's got 13 members, 10 elected, 2 for borough, 3 appointees, 1 each from the public advocate and the other councils. Again, too much in the weeds for most people, but it's useful to know that they are what the structure is that has replaced. This structure has replaced the school boards for public engagement in education.
It's the
No. He'll change it.
Okay, thank you. King James. So again, I've actually already spoken about this. What do they do? The important thing, which is kind of hard, and you know this because you are members of the community boards, but these councils are public bodies and are governed by rules applicable to public officials, including the Open Meetings Law. That means that people can go and protest and do whatever they want at these meetings. The purpose of these councils is to provide a forum for public input. So that's why at every monthly meeting, there has to be time for time has to be set aside for public comment on issues of on education issues of public concern. And all councils are set. And for community education councils, not for the citywide councils, these meetings must be held in conjunction with the community superintendent. And that is, that is a forum for bringing concerns, not just to parent volunteers, but also to the superintendent, who can actually, who actually is empowered to do something about some issues. Citywide councils have really only advisory powers, and I've already spoken about that. Okay, these are the list. This is the list of powers that are actually in the state law. So I think I've spoken about all of this. Schedule public hearings on that will require public feedback, such as, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the contracts for excellence, that there are public hearings on that. Zoning lines I spoke about. Hold joint public hearings on street closings and co-locations. Not so much now, but during the Greenberg administration, there were a lot of those. They were very, controversial, very contentious. And then basically in January, as I spoke before, in January the Department of Education is obligated by law to go and spread the word about the campaign. But the actual application period begins on February 14, because again, we're limited by law in how we run the campaign and how long the campaign takes. So it's between January 14 and March 6, people can apply. And the elections are only held online. The applications are online, the voting is online, and it will run over the next, until May 25. Any questions?
Any questions?
Can we give the presentation?
Brian,
Yes,
we'll
send
email
that.
the presentation to all the chairs. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, as you all know, we're anticipating a quorum shortly for a vote on the non-traditional employment for women agenda item that we have. But before that, we're gonna do community board chair updates, and then somewhere in between the community board chair updates, we'll interrupt to do the borough president's update. And then the minute we have quorum, we'll have to interrupt again just to take the vote. Okay? So we'll begin with community board 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry to sound perhaps a little repetitive, but our major issues remain the same, and that is preparing for ULURP with the Manhattan Detention Center regarding the closure of Rikers Island. In fact, it was our first Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting last night, and CB1 and CB3 are trying to determine how to partner together to prepare the ULURP response. The second item is that we are still very concerned, actually it's almost frantic, about our Lower Manhattan coastal resiliency. It's approaching almost a year since we've had any further updates from the Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resiliency. We know this, our district will be a very challenging one to protect, but it is now over 6 years since Superstorm Sandy, and effectively nothing has happened other than measures taken by Port Authority, MTA, and Con Ed, which are all valuable, but not a complete solution yet. So that's really it. I'll move on with
Thank you.
to the next board. Thank you.
Thank you. Community board 2.
The L train updates, sort of some big changes, but there are answers.
You think?
And
Come back next
we're,
week.
right, we keep getting a lot of questions from a lot of our constituents, and as I'm sure everybody knows, the street level mitigation plans, we don't really have the answers on, so there's a lot of anticipation about what those changes will bring or won't bring. Google Hudson Square is still in the mix, obviously, but we don't have any updates as well on that. I raised that last month. One of the things I wanted to ask, we had received Bob Bromley, our district manager, an unsolicited report on the after-hours variances from the Department of Buildings, and the list is pretty staggering. I don't know if any of the other community boards have looked at those lists. And there's some question raised by our committee chairs as far as the impact of those variances. And I was just wondering if any other community boards had requested those reports. I was sort of surprised to get them, how detailed they were, and the fact that it was after the fact. And so I'm not sure.
Does the report include the reasons?
It does not. It does not. And I mean, the numbers are just staggering. I'm sure it's the case everywhere. And if anybody has personally had experienced long-term construction near where they live, with the after-hours variances, I mean, it's never-ending. It seems while the projects
I
are
just
in
want to say
motion.
I think everybody should request them. I
Yeah.
talked to the mayor about them. I used a lot of bad words in relation to them, and they should not exist. They didn't
Yeah.
until the middle of the Bloomberg administration. We never heard of them unless there was a crane or some kind of extenuating circumstance. So I think we should make a bigger issue of it. It is, I'll leave it at that. We need to work on this. It's outrageous. It's a new development in the last 10 years. They don't give reasons because they say it's automatic.
That's right.
Mhm.
And it's a huge revenue generator from what
That's good.
what we've heard.
We will work on it.
Thank you. Community Board 3?
Yes, good morning. I'm David Floyd, First Vice Chair on behalf of Alicia Lewis Coleman. Happy New Year to all. No real different issues. Of course, the ULURP issue, we're working with Board 1 on with the detention center. The L train shut down, and now there seems to be some type of a kerfuffle with the bike lanes on 12th and 13th Street with people putting shards of glass in them. Some of the neighbors don't want the bike lanes that were put up for the L train. And at our Health and Human Services Committee, Mount Sinai Beth Israel came with their proposal. They went to, and Rosie was at the meeting, they're going to move their behavioral health services. They're proposing to move them to Rivington House. And of course, the people that want a nursing home are standing their ground accordingly.
Thank you. CB4?
Morning, everybody. Again, Happy New Year, Feliz Año. What was your word, Anthony? Reiterate? Okay.
Polite.
Reiterate. Just to keep an eye on what was relevant to us and what we were focused on last year is still in front of us. So we have the Port Authority rebuilding and the Port Authority bus terminal rebuilding. Housing, the issues of Harborview. Borough President and other electeds have been very helpful on that, but we don't have a resolution. Completion of the Hudson River Park, which to us means Pier 97, which is now under design, which is the last pier at like 59th Street and the river. We got a whole pot of new money to complete that. Also, the removal of, if anybody's familiar with the tow pound, which is at 38th Street or so. We want to get rid of, we don't want to get rid of it, we want to move it. If anybody wants to volunteer or
You
play.
can get rid of it altogether. You don't worry.
Well, I mean, when you get into the nitty gritty of it, the question is, that was built for a certain time and place. One, do they need that capacity anymore? Do they need to actually tow cars anymore? I mean, there's a whole question when you're trying to move the facility. The physical facility opens up the whole culture and the whole process of what is the purpose and do we still want to do it the same way we were doing it 50 years ago, which may have been appropriate then, but maybe absolutely irrelevant to do it now. And also with completion of the Park Pier 57, which is both public space and Google is taking I don't know if it's 250 or 350,000 square feet on the pier for commercial development, but with lots of restaurants and opening up to the roof and southern views. So some of that southern view may be blocked by something in CB2, Pier 55, which is going out with their pods out there, but we'll still have it. The no plan for the L train, that's a plan. Of course, it's a concern, and we have the same issues on construction. Same issues. And we call them in. You know, we call them in, hey, related or whoever it is, do you really need to do it? Maybe we can work something out. Without going down any official route, we just trying to have a discussion and see if there's some kind of, within the context, a reasonable, quote-unquote, solution to the problem. This is all ongoing. My report every month will be the same. Hopefully, new developments.
Community Board 5?
And the seats right here, right, Diana? We'll get to another chair. Give them a chair. Oh, I'm sorry.
Community Board 5? Sorry.
Okay, good morning, everyone. One was an announcement, and I'll follow up because of the construction discussion. The Assistant DA, Diana Florence, who heads the task force that came about in 2015 under the DA Vance, has been successful, very successful in prosecuting and convicting violations that are reported. And they came to our committee to give us a hotline and phone number and email to use to provide video and evidence. They've been super successful in the last 3.5 years, and they collaborate with the city, the state, and the federal agencies. So I just wanted to mention that in case, I think they may be going around to some of the other community boards. But it's a good thing to have, and for your residents and people who are reporting problems to really follow through on them. They've been very good at not only prosecuting but convicting. We passed a resolution to provide New York City middle and high school full-time mental health professional. Some of you may be aware of this because they're also going to the other community boards.
Yes.
They may have been to some already. Board 3, shaking your head, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just to let you know what it is, the young woman who is working on this is a high school student. She's been working with the Borough President's leadership team. She's the Director of External Affairs for Stuyvesant Student Union. She's been doing this since she has been in middle school. She came to our BEX committee to outline the pressures that kids face in school with mental issues, everything from home situations, stress regarding admissions in high school and colleges. She noted that guidance counselors in New York City public schools are swamped with admission and other issues, and there's no place for them to go. So they're recommending proposed funding for 1 social worker for every 100 students. The resolution was presented to our committee and it passed. It's currently being presented to other community boards. Did you pass the resolution yet?
I don't believe so, not yet.
Our members were a little concerned. We had 2 members that were concerned about having a general worker as opposed to a mental health worker. So, but it did pass unanimously in spite of that. The other concern was that they were concerned about the funding because DOE has no funding for the proposal, and it would impact and it might impact and reduce the teachers in the public schools. We had, on sanitation, we had scoping process began for the commercial waste zone plan. I don't know if anybody else is. We sent our comments in. We have a lot of questions. One of the reasons why is because we are the most affected. We right now have 52 corridors operating in our district, and evidently this is going down to 3 to 5. Seems almost unbelievable, so I don't know. We're really looking for answers on that. Dealing with homelessness, one of our members is working on her own fellowship to develop public-private partnerships on issues surrounding the homeless, and in particular, to alleviate some of the problems that they face, like restrooms. And she has located, actually, in one of our POPs at Times Square, the owner is required to maintain a public bathroom, and so she's investigating with the Times Square Alliance whether or not this might be a way to provide public facilities for the homeless. She's reaching out to other community chairs. I think she's already contacted Ward 4. Let's see. And the last thing was, I just really want to say, needless to say, we are thrilled with Gail's response regarding 270 Park Avenue, which was to disapprove with modifications and conditions. I think last month my vice chair reported on this and how troubling it is. We are particularly pleased with the recommendations pointing out and referencing the importance of the public realm, which is something all of you might remember when we were doing the East Midtown zoning, how important it was, and the preservation of landmarks. So within the East Midtown district. So it was noted by everyone who saw that letter, and we thank you, Gail. Thank you so much.
Great land use staff. Thank you.
And that's it.
It was actually borrowed.
Thank you. We're going to interrupt the community board chair updates for Borough Board vote. Jim or James, do you want to give any quick background? I know EDC presented on October 18th, so everybody had that presentation.
EDC presented this. Does everyone have the resolution? You should take a really quick look at it. There's some non-substantive changes. We worked with EDC on this. This is for the non-traditional employment for women at 243 West 20th Street in the Speakers District. It's a 384B4, so pursuant to the charter, the city, the Borough Board approves just lease terms for property that is not being auctioned off to the highest bidder. This is being given to EDC so that they can enter into a new lease with New, and that will allow New to access capital funds that the City Council has appropriated for them. They have less than 5 years on their current lease, so since to spend capital funds you need at least a 5-year useful life, they won't be able to spend the funds unless they re-up their lease. So that's what this does. You can all take a quick look. Lizette and EDC are here to answer any questions, and we'll vote, and we'll take questions if there are any, or vote in about 30 seconds.
And just to add on to what Jim was saying, there was a ULURP, there were actually several ULURPs done on this in the 80s, and so this disposition is covered by those ULURPs, because this is about lease terms, not about land use review. So we did the research, and it's all
Jessica, I think Richard needs a seat.
by the book.
Okay? So if there's no further background or discussion, do we have a motion for the resolution? Is there a motion?
I move we pass this resolution.
I second it.
Second? Okay. We'll do the roll call vote. Borough President Brewer,
Yes?
Councilmember Chin,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivera, Councilmember Speaker Johnson, Councilmember Keith Powers,
Yes.
Councilmember Kalos.
Permission to explain my vote
Oh.
briefly?
Yeah.
I will make it shorter than I had planned, which is just one of my best friends got a graduate degree in library science, couldn't get a job anywhere, ended up at New, where she became a plumber. She's been employed and happy ever since, and just wanted to make sure folks knew my personal skin in the game and why I believe in New so much before I voted out.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember Levine,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayala,
Aye.
Councilmember Perkins, Councilmember Rodriguez, Community Board 4 Chair Bert Lazar.
Preface to my yes, this is a major community asset in our district. Many of our people, residents in the district, have been trained and have gotten jobs through New. It's 30 years old. We appreciate its presence. We want to support its presence. The full board voted in support of this in November, and I'm saying yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes unanimously. Actually, wow, right in the nick of time, yeah!
Are we here all year?
Jim, do you want the resolution real quick, so we can?
All you have to say is aye.
I'm voting enthusiastically yes.
Yes! So unanimous resolution passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
And for all their work on this.
Yep.
So, we have Community Board 6 on deck. I say on deck because we want to do the Borough President update.
Well, no, let the council members do, I'm fine.
Council member updates.
If you want to do quickly, council
And
members.
then we'll resume with Community Board updates unless the Borough President wants to do her
No,
update.
I
So
wait.
council members?
Who was-
You like, okay? Councilmember Powell?
I'm happy to, well, you want to go? You're one?
Well, I gotta leave, but
Go ahead.
just that
Go on,
the
Ori.
borough president and I were still fighting on the 2 bridges. The council has also retained private attorney to help. So we are very hopeful that we can beat them back and get them back into the ULURP. So we will have a full comprehensive review. And also budget process started. So we encourage, community groups to apply, and we work very closely with the borough president to support bridge projects in our district.
Okay. Keith, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, I just wanted to follow up on 270 Park Avenue, of course, which is the JP Morgan site. It's part of the East Midtown rezoning, which is now, I think, coming to me so shortly. And I want to thank the community board and the borough president for their thoughtful comments about open space in East Midtown, particularly at a site that's going to be a big one and headquarters to a major company here in New York City. So I look forward to getting it and trying to reflect those comments in it as well. Second is I want to thank the borough president as well. We have in Community Board 6 Waterside Plaza, which is it's in the paper today actually, has a great housing deal with HPD that we are working till next week to get a really meaningful housing deal done. I want to thank the borough president as well for her thoughtful comments on that to help us move the ball downfield. I will keep it short. Otherwise, we have the budget process is open. Councilmember Rivera and I are actually doing a event for any groups that are looking to apply for funding. It's tonight at the 14th Street Y, starting at 6:30.
Yep.
I think 6:30. So if anybody in any of your community boards are interested in applying for funding through the council or through the borough president, they're more than welcome to come and join us. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna?
I think one of the biggest things that we're working on now is a year after the East Harlem rezoning is really bringing back the city and the stakeholders that participated in those conversations and kind of just updating the community on where we are and some of those commitments that were made. It's been a long time, a year is a long time to have no conversation. So I think that's one of the things that we're talking about. And then yesterday we met with Julie Menon about the census, and so we're also ramping up, and I think that, I know I'll be having this conversation with my local community board about ways that we can start to kind of strategize, because it seems like, a ways off, but we should really be having those conversations now. Some communities fared really well, and some communities did not. One of the things I think that was really surprising to me was that African American communities did not do as well, and so there needs to be a bigger outreach effort made in those communities. There's also an opportunity for jobs to come to our communities, and so we're having those conversations, and whether or not, through this, the census is actually adequately funded right now. So we're going to be, lobbying the state obviously to put in more resources. But those are two of the biggest, I think, that we're working on now.
Helen?
Not to repeat my colleagues, we're having a really good hearing with Councilmember Chin, I'm chair of the Committee on Women, about women aging into poverty. And it's going to be, I was just checking the date, I think it's next week on the 23rd. So if you know of people who would want to testify at that, your senior centers, I encourage you to come.
Okay, we're working on 2 issues I want to update you on out of the Health Committee. One is to combat the epidemic of e-cigarette use among adolescents. This was sold as a way for adult smokers to transition off cigarettes, but it's now become a frighteningly trendy thing among high schoolers, and one of the reasons is the fruity flavors in which many of these e-cigarettes are offered in. So we have a bill that would ban flavored e-cigarettes in New York City to try and prevent young people from getting hooked. Secondly, we're working to combat the problem of added sugar in fast food meals that would surprise people to know that, for example, in a salad at Wendy's, there are 40 grams of added sugar. That's 10 teaspoons. It's 2 days worth of the sugar you're supposed to get. Baked beans at KFC. A little one is 18 grams of added sugar. I could go on and on and on. So we want to build on the success of the added sodium symbol and the calorie count symbols that now are on menus, and have a little symbol for a lot of added sugar, just so people have information. You're not banning anything, but we want people to know what they're eating.
Carlina, did you want to go next?
Sure.
Ben kindly gave up his spot for you.
Oh, wow. Yesterday we had, I'm the chair of hospitals, for those of you that don't know. Actually, let me start by thanking CB5 and CB6 for helping with the resource fair we had yesterday in Borough College at Kips Bay. It was very successful. Thank you, Gil, for stopping by.
It was terrific.
It was great. It was great. It was the best one yet. So yesterday we had a really good hospital hearing on dish cuts, which are disproportionate hospital share hospital dollars, which is how our, especially H&H, which is our public hospital system, gets funds to really serve low-income people, under and uninsured people. So it's a big deal. It's something that we have to lobby the state for in the governor's budget and make sure that we are in touch with our colleagues in DC and Albany. We are also staying on top of L-train issues, the big mystery as to what's going to happen and how our neighborhoods are going to be impacted and what we have to, I guess, peel back, if anything, in terms of mitigation. And then, of course, speaking of mitigation, we have a very big hearing next Wednesday for my community. Thank you to the committees on the environment and on parks. The Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project is a $1.45 billion project that will totally renovate an over 50-acre park along the east side. It's a very big deal for our community. We've been working on this since Hurricane Sandy brought 8 feet of water into the Lower East Side. And so from Stuyvesant Cove down to Montgomery Street, we really want to make sure that this park, the design is led by the people and that it is open as soon as possible for active and passive recreation. You know, other than that, not much going on in the news. But I just want to thank everyone for their support.
Thank you. Ben?
Sure. Any council members need to leave, I will not be offended. I tend to go on, as it were. I want to just start with the East River, and so with the East River 50s Alliance, which we were able to stop a 1,100-foot tower with the help of Gail, Senator Kruger. They ended up moving forward with an 800-foot tower. We rezoned before they could finish their foundation, which I will touch on later, but that is important. We stopped their building. Then they went to the BSA. The BSA overturned us because that's what BSA always does to the community. And so now we're in court. I'm working with Michael Hiller, who many of you may know. I'm also his co-counsel, pro bono counsel to the community East River 50s. We've so far won 2 times in court. Right now, the developer has agreed to continue to build the building in following the new laws that we set. And just so you know, and all of you know this because you've seen it before, a developer never hedges their bet if they think they're going to win. So I'm cautiously optimistic on that. On the issue of voids, that's something that Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts in my district and Landmarks West in Helen's district have been working on. I think we have 2 different buildings that are concerned, one in Keith Powers' district, the Bar Bill building, and Helen has the Extel site and soon to be the ABC site. So we are working with city planning. They've put forward a plan and we're trying to work out some things, and we're cautiously optimistic to have resolution there. And then and there's been a lot of good news, and the borough president can speak to other good news that came out relating to that. On the Upper East Side, we don't have enough school seats. We just got 640 new seats in the plan for the Upper East Side, either in my district or Keith's district, to a tune of, I believe, $93 million. All of you have heard me go on and on against real estate. You've also heard Gail go on and on against real estate.
Not
and
now.
concerned about just the influence of real estate money in politics, and we changed the law. So as of this past Saturday, it's now 8-1. Candidates get 75% of their money from public dollars instead of real estate dollars. And I am hoping that for everyone at this table, you will have elected officials who are far more responsive to you. And then the last piece is just our borough president has been leading a construction safety task force, and just to support that work, we've introduced legislation saying that you actually have to pay people when they do construction more than a minimum wage, that they should have health benefits, that they shouldn't make the affordable housing crisis work, that they should have apprenticeship, some of the stuff that happens at News, so that they can be trained and not get hurt. We've had more people injured or killed in the past year than ever before. And last but not least, we should know the conflicts that the developers have, and who they're getting their money from, and whether or not they have city employees working for them now. So that's just a long summary of the things we've been working on. You can read our 36-page newsletter online anytime.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Rosenthal has an addendum, and then we can turn to Borough President Brewer.
Or just go to 6 and come
we'll
around.
We'll go to Community Board 6.
I just want to talk about homeless shelters for 1 second, and Roberta, you might be talking about this as well, so I apologize if I'm preempting. We had a community board meeting that unfortunately I missed, but we have a homeless shelter, supportive services homeless shelter on one street that hasn't worked out, and we negotiated with the administration to get it moved to a better site with better security and better social services, and it was 1 block over. Which is very exciting and a huge win for our community. It's actually exactly what our community asked for. Unfortunately, at the community board meeting, someone came in with, had riled up a bunch of residents with misinformation, came in, gave that misinformation, and turned everything upside down. Now, we all know when to listen to our communities and when to, do the right thing. So it's not going to affect what moves forward. But I bring it up because it's worth the effort, as just an example to say, it's worth the effort to maybe bring some community board members with you as you go on tours of sites. So you can have validators in the room to stand with you, to say, no, this really ain't a problem, and the things you're bringing up are actually not true. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure I put that out there as a cautionary tale. This is such a major win for the community, and yet, with loads of misinformation, it's easy for the rumor mongers to take control, inaccurately.
That was during the public session?
Yeah, unfortunately. Look, I wasn't there, which, maybe I shouldn't have gone to that tenant meeting, but.
It was bad. It was during the public session.
We gotta do 6 first, all right?
Yeah, so
But
I
we
just bring
did,
that
we
up.
did manage to change it, so that the original resolution was against the shelter totally. And we changed it to it's basically a better, that if a shelter is being moved within the district, that we need more input, so.
I mean, there was a public meeting. I mean, it's just
It
so
was horrible.
funny how
It was
these
really
things
horrible.
get turned around.
Yeah.
There was so much public input, but again, it's these crowds that can be challenging. So anyway.
Thank you. Community Board 6, Chair update.
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I wanted to say before Keith leaves that my city council person invited me to ring the NASDAQ bell yesterday morning with him. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of a silly thing, but it was a lot of fun. It was very cool. We are writing a letter regarding the 270 Park Avenue deal, the Chase building, and in support of Community Board 5 and the Borough President's office. So we'll work on that and in support of, objecting to their plan. So I appreciate your comments, and we'll just in support of you do that. Our Transportation Committee meeting met this week, and we have a lot of concerns with the L train. I mean, we've been on all the calls and in all the meetings, And we're writing a resolution, they're doing that now, to at least keep all of the street changes that were made, the bus lanes, the bike lanes, and we need to keep that infrastructure that they've put in place, because no matter what type of L-train plan moves forward, we'll need to have some remediation, and, So yeah, so that's happening. The ESCR, we're still in all those meetings with Community Board 3, and on top of that, and I don't know, they're coming to our Land Use Committee meeting next week again, and they're available, they're making themselves available, the mayor's office and the DDC, so it's great, and they want to work with us, but I'm glad we have the community team, like, really coalition gathering. And then, I did want to mention the town hall, de Blasio, I don't know, Gail, if you were still there when de Blasio was talking about the construction variances, and you were there, right? And I think he was even baffled by that, so, I mean, it's on his radar, it's on all.
He couldn't explain it.
So
he was missing. He couldn't explain.
So yeah, but they're similarly baffled at every town hall. He was baffled at ours, which was 4 months ago.
So I know you mentioned it, but yeah.
It's a good show. The show was.
So everyone's really should be on everyone's radar, because we do get the complaints. It was specifically about some project around the UN, but.
Oh, really? That's after our variances?
Well, he brought his people up and had them. Yeah. They were very concerned.
Oh,
sorry.
They are.
That's
very concerned.
Oh, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 7.
Very exciting news. Last afternoon, we were actually having a meeting with people from Gail's office, people from Mark's office, and people from Helen's office. The co-chair of Land Use is also the chair of Landmarks West. Landmarks West had a victory yesterday. The DOB has stopped construction at 36 West 66th Street. And Paige was actually in tears. She was so happy. So it was very exciting. They're continuing to work on the lawsuit because we're worried now that BSA can.
Roberta, what it was, I know, but what was it based on, so people know?
It was based on
the voice, I think.
They had a lawsuit, a challenge, so it was based on the challenge on the voids. And so it's basically on the void. I didn't bring the letter, and I apologize, but and Gail wrote a press release last night about it. It's so exciting because the void enables them to raise the building up to a certain height so they can then have multi-million-dollar apartments. And the problem with the voids is there are many problems with the void, but if the fire department needs to get into that area, they can't. It's a danger for the fire people, and it doesn't have to be a fire. It could be smoke. It could be a whole bunch of problems. So the challenge was really well thought out, and we'll know. They had a meeting this morning. We'll know more, and I can get that information to everybody. Our other thing is we have an urban fellow who's working on affordable housing, and he's come up with a plan to look at using data from Furman and from city planning to look at where all the affordable housing is so we can update it. Once we have it, we're glad to share with everybody else because it's an easy model to use. And so he should, I think he's going to make a presentation in April. I'll send an email out so everyone can send someone to that. And then we've had several kerfuffles at the full board meetings. The shelter was the first one. This last month was bylaws. So we had someone challenge our bylaws. We finished them 6 years ago. We did a year-long study of bylaws. We had a task force that met every other week for a year. We finished the bylaws. We presented them to the board in December of 2012. At that meeting, someone proposed term limits for co-chairs of committees. And so it passed. And so February is the month when the 6-year term limit is up. So the beginning of January, I removed all the term-limited co-chairs and put in brand new co-chairs. And it was like I had blown up the whole city of New York. So we've had two challenges to the bylaws. The last one, there was screaming and shouting, and it was a very chaotic public meeting. And our meetings are on YouTube. We were very lucky that there were no reporters there. And then last week, I got another email from somebody with a third bylaws change. So I'm creating a bylaws task force that will work slowly and methodically and just look at the bylaws. But suddenly, I had, at the steering meeting Tuesday night, there were almost 30 people there, but we certainly had a quorum. We could have had a full board meeting, and everybody's interested in the bylaws. People that have never read a bylaws in their life were suddenly interested in bylaws. So
you do the same thing, everybody.
That's my story.
Thank you. CB8.
Good morning. I'm Gail Barron, the first vice chair of CBA, representing Chair Alita Camp. We are continuing to try to advance our resolution providing for a 210-foot height limit on the avenues east of 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and York. We have been fortunate to have had some funding for an urban planner from Councilmember Kalos, and what we're doing now is putting together the pre-application. We hope to be meeting with you then sometime this month so that we can really progress it, make sure that we do whatever we can, because we're finding the same problem with all the developers. So as you have more and more tall buildings, you're losing air and space and light and real quality of life. We too are experiencing a lot of problems with the after-hour variances, so we will ask for those reports. We've been inviting the Department of Buildings to our zoning and development meetings for the past several months, but they never show up. We've written letters and all, so now, thank you, we'll definitely pursue that.
We'll get them to show up.
We appreciate that, Gail. We also are concerned about the proposed Target store on East 69th Street. The initial application was turned down because they applied as a department store as compared to a variety store, which is what the zoning calls for. But what we're learning is that they may well be using that site as a center for pickup. Also, there are no loading bridges, so we're very concerned about 18-wheelers suddenly disrupting the entire neighborhood. And the other thing that we're working very closely on is trying to see what we can do to enhance our small local businesses. We've been having forums initially with our restaurateurs, trying to find out what their issues are and to see if there's anything that we can work toward to really assist them. We plan to do the same with the retailers. We have been meeting with the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and they'll partner with us on the initiative. And we also ask the community board members to reach out to their local retailers so that they would be aware of SBS's grants to help those that really are in need to tide them over. And we know that the, I guess the closing date is the 22nd for those applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 9.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Just a few things real quickly. So one, just before the New Year, Community Board 9, together with the West Harlem Development Corporation, or local development corporation, and some other community-based organizations. As many of you know, I've been speaking about addressing mass incarceration in our community board. So we created the Upper Manhattan Collaborative for Justice, and there's going to be a position funded by the West Harlem Development Corporation to support that. Basically what it's going to be looking to do is coordinate a whole bunch of various organizations that provide support for those that have been touched by the justice system in various manners, but just to make sure that they have access to a variety of resources, social services, so that no one is falling through the crack. We'll definitely be looking to join forces with our other community boards in Upper Manhattan and also elected officials to let them know about this, and as well as other organizations, resource services. DOT presented to us the other day on Amsterdam Avenue. This is something that is happening basically from 110th to 155th. There may be a few blocks here and there where we did not touch, but it's going to be a substantial change. One of the big things is addressing some of the fatalities that occurred on Amsterdam Avenue. So to some extent, there's be a removal of one lane for certain areas, turning lanes, inclusion of bike lanes. And so we're in the process of working in DOT to see the best way to implement that. I want to alert everyone here to something that we've been working together with CB11, CB10, and a few other community-based organizations. As most of you know, in April of 2018, the J. Marion Sims statue was taken down from 103rd Street and 5th Avenue. Our council member, Mark Levine, as well as council member Rosenthal were there previously speaking about the injustice by the presence of that statue. That came down, and so now it currently will be placed in the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. But right now we're looking to get input on what needs to go up there. So there's a survey that's online, EHP, East Harlem Preservation, ehp.nyc. You can just click on the same statue and you can go up there and give your input of what you would like to see. So we want, the deadline is February 13th, so everyone please make sure that that's included there. Thank you to CB8. They submitted their resolution in the public commission, and we definitely will be getting a resolution on that as well. So we have some of the talking points that you focus. We heard recently in terms of the pushback on the decision of asking on the census, the question of citizenship on the census outlay. So we know that's not the end of it. There's going to be other court cases, but we just want to make sure that in reference to the trip that we made up to Rhode Island, what we can collectively do to ensure that everyone in our community boards are counted. CB9 is working on a developers compendium, basically for all the developers that are currently at work or working or looking to work in Community Board 9. So we have an idea of the various things that they're going to be doing. So definitely when it's completed, we'll be happy to share it with other boards, so that whether it's something that they want to do. We have been also working with Assemblyman Al Taylor is addressing some of the HDFCs that's facing some of the troubles in our board as well. And last, we together with local nonprofit, we are working on a landmark initiative where we're going to be reviewing over a 5-block from between Broadway and Amsterdam around 145th to 150th Street to determine any facilities in that area that may be able to be landmarked to somewhat protect and preserve the community's heritage and culture. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations on the Upper Manhattan Collaborative for Justice.
Thank
It
you.
sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah.
Will that position be housed at the community board?
It will be housed in WHTC.
Okay,
West Harlem Bank Corporation.
Okay, interesting. Community Board 10?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cicely Harris. I'm the chair of Community Board 10. But I would like to let everyone know I'll be with you for another 2 years. We had our election in November. In January, started my own term as chair of Community Board 10. I took over for Brian Benjamin when he was elected for state senator. So this is my own term, my own 2 terms. So, yay! I'm excited about that. We have some.
Let's see how you feel about it in 2 years.
That's what everybody says. So we have 3 activities that I wanted to announce to everyone. First, we are celebrating the Harlem Renaissance all year long. Our first event is we are hosting India RE January 22nd at one of our local businesses, Hexagon Lounge. We are working with Harlem Arts Alliance and Senator Brian Benjamin and Radio 103.9. So the event is on Harlem Eventbrite. It's free. And she's going to talk about, her struggles as an African-American woman and, being accepting of herself in an age where sometimes beauty is decided by the media. So she's going to talk about that and her new album. So that's January 22nd. The 23rd, we're going to have an informational session on legalization of marijuana. And what will that look like, especially in communities that have been disproportionately affected by marijuana and the laws surrounding that. So that will be January 23rd at the Harlem State Office Building. We are doing that in conjunction with Senator Brian Benjamin and Assemblywoman Inez Dickens, along with the NAACP. There's a lot of the groups involved. And it will be bipartisan, so it won't be that we are advocating for anything. It's just educational, so everyone can be informed about what's going to happen or what could happen. Okay? And then we are having an information session with LPC on historic preservation in conjunction with the Manhattan Borough President's Office and LPC. So there have been so many issues going on with people trying to preserve their buildings, but also make changes and update their buildings so that they're up to code. But what does that look like when you already have a historic preservation landmarking designation? So that is on the 24th, and that's also at the Harlem State Office Building. We are also working with CB9, and I think CB11's talking about HDFCs as well, with Assemblyman Al Taylor. So we're going to get a forum together on that. And we're also planning our second faith-based organization forum that's going to look at land use and churches. So how is that affecting those? And that's in partnership with the Manhattan Borough President as well.
CB11.
Well, they've said it all, so I don't know if I should talk about it. Okay. So we're currently moving forward. I don't know if you saw in the newspapers this past week with the media entertainment project on 125th. So there was funding, I think $129 million has been put into that project on 125th Street. So that will be moving forward. We are also gearing up because the 2nd Avenue subway, as you know, it will be affecting our area. So we are putting together our task force. You know, in the initial past few months, there hasn't really been a lot going on, but that's supposed to start gearing up. So we want to make sure that we are on the forefront and making sure that we are in the conversation. With that said, of course, there are some of the properties that the MTA has talked about taking over a portion of, and so I'm sure that those developers will be looking to try to rezone their properties to try to make their buildings taller. So that's something that we're gonna be looking at, especially since Excel owns a property on 125th. We are CB9, CB10, and CB11. We are going to, I'm reaching out to them, and I already talked to Pat Moore regarding a meeting to talk about the ideas for the consolidated sanitation garage that will be relocating. So we are going to be having a meeting talking about that. I want to thank Yaseli for putting together a leadership panel where myself, Gail, Diana, and one other gentleman who's not here participated. And that was a great way for us to talk about leadership experiences and helping to inspire the next generation of educators. Children's Aid is still in conversation with the developer and with Mount Sinai to see potentially about whether they fit into a project that will create a whole floor for them and continue the services that they've been giving to the community, or is it just better to hold on to their property and redevelop as a separate site?
I just want to mention thank you to the council member, to Matthew, and to you, because this is a win. What happens is that Diana told Matthew and the Children's Aid Society, these nonprofits love to sell in Manhattan and then move to the Bronx to take care of their mission. That's what usually happens. So these three had a fit. And to the credit of the woman who's the head of CS, she sat right here, I must have used every 4-letter word known to mankind. And she got the message. And Diana did it more politely. But in any case, long story short is they have now worked, instead of doing condos, in the only outdoor basketball court in the community and the only outdoor services for the, et cetera, there's a plan now to work with the hospital, and the hospital would in fact retain whatever the community wants, more or less, in terms of facilities for the community. That's the short version. But I just want to, you should know this is a huge collaboration and a huge win, and you should be very proud of all your efforts.
I think the difference happened when you got involved and other elected officials got involved, so it wasn't just, the community. The community was very boisterous in expressing their opinion. So was I was caught on tape. But we're working toward that. We've also had a meeting last week with the Parks Department, I believe maybe at Gail's instigation and maybe Diana's instigation, regarding where we are in terms of our projects and capital improvements. And so one of the things that we talked about was this 107th Street Pier and how would that look like and how we're moving forward to raise funds in that venue. We have La Marqueta, which I've mentioned before. The La Marqueta board has finalized an MOU and that has been submitted to EDC, and EDC seems fine with it. So if both parties are in agreement, we're gonna move forward with that MOU to then try to revitalize La Marqueta and get you know, the partners in there that we need so that that becomes a viable site once more. Our East Harlem El Barrio Land Trust is moving into phase 2 for the redevelopment of 2 buildings, and with 2 other buildings being redeveloped in phase 3, so we can give low income housing to our lowest of the low, but we're also going to have a mix of affordability and commercial space so that we become the first land trust in the East Harlem area.
Wow.
And I have written this before she mentioned it, but I wanted to congratulate on the pulling of the permits. The Extel building that wanted to be 77 floors, and so that's a great thing. So other than that, I'm not going to talk anymore. And we're going to do some Census 2020 task force, because now with that win that we got, with that court win, and hopefully it'll stay like that, we want to make sure we start getting out the words to the community now.
You thought you had nothing to say.
I know, you see, and then I keep saying, all right, that's it for me.
I wanted to say that, that the city council is putting together an internal task force as well. It'll be led by myself and Councilmember Carlos Menchaca from Brooklyn, and yesterday
Whose idea was that?
I think it was yours, Gail. I wanted to say it was a collaborative thought, but I'll give you credit. Gail just has no good ideas, so this was a first.
No, Carlina came to her credit to Providence, Rhode Island, and I said, you better have a task force on the census, and you should be the chair.
Yeah,
And then I talked to Corey, and I said, we went to task.
And then I made it happen.
Congratulations.
I'm more of an implementation person.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, so we heard a presentation yesterday by Julie Menon, who's the mayor's point person. They've only put into the budget about $4.3 million for the census. This is compared to $90 million by the state of California. So the estimates for New York State are at least in like the 30s or 40 million. So we have to figure out how to push for more funding, because we're going to be relying on a lot of the community-based organizations in your area. So just want you to know that we're taking it very seriously and we want to be supportive.
How many community boards have a working group or task force on census? You mentioned
yeah, we're
starting up.
We're starting up.
Okay. All right. Last among equals, Community Board 12.
Welcome.
This is my first meeting as the new chair of Community Board 12. So in the same.
And your name?
Huh?
Your name?
Richard Lewis.
Richard Lewis.
I've been here before, obviously in the same position as CB10, so it's still like family. And you're right, there are pressures for a long-term commitment to doing this. The big thing in our community, I guess, is the elevator replacement on the #1 line at 168th Street, which is a major transportation hub. That is underway. Gail and the council member and communities met with the New York City Transit president. Everyone has been concerned about this. I will say that there's been a great deal of planning to make sure there would not be confusion about with commuters where they should go. It more or less has worked out well. We've had very few complaints. The major one has been the bus service, the connection between the M5. And last night I did speak to the MTA representative about that. And I think Gail has written a proposal for shuttle service, which is probably a better alternative than what they have now. They have taken away one bus stop. There's a lot of, the contract has taken away a lot of space for this. Newsstands have been closed because of electrical issues that they had to deal with. So there've been some problems, but it has, more or less it has worked out well. We are making a proposal, just as the L train, that we feel is a more efficient way of dealing with this. That proposal will come up at our meeting on a general meeting on Tuesday. And amongst that proposal for an engineering study, we will be presenting a proposal for ADA compliancy, which will be different from the suggestions that the Transit Authority is making, that we'd have to drill 10 stories down. There's already existing structure in that station, which we have discovered, and we will give a suggestion of how that existing structure can be used for ADA compliancy at minimal cost. And I'm rather surprised that they did not come up with that idea, because it's fairly obvious. And so we will present that proposal at our next meeting, which is on Tuesday. Briefly, the Ann Loftus playground will be under renovation with a splash pool. Since the city does not do wading pools any longer, we'll make that ADA compliant. There are a grouping and programming of 40 different shower sprays for the children in that park in a very innovative way. So that has been a great discussion that we've had. There have been some additions added to that playground as well. The Sherman Plaza structure was sold twice. There are builders, the new builders under, as of right, will be building a new structure. We saw the plans. We will see what happens as a result of that. We will be having a resolution on congested pricing at our next meeting, and we'll see what the fate of that. Essentially, that is it, except for one other thing. We'll be doing a major resolution on needle exchange and needle disposal in subways. Has been a problem. I don't know, we are asking certain commitments from the MTA to deal with this problem. I think other stations in the city have had this issue. And so we will be making some suggestions for some kind of monitoring, some kind of personnel to supervise that situation. That's it.
So we have the Borough President's report on deck, Safe Horizons, if you could come up. Safe Horizon for Victims Assistance Unit. Councilmember Rosenthal is here particularly for your presentation as well. She's very excited. We have the Borough President update now, and then we'll go to Safe Horizons.
Very quick. A couple of things. First of all, I want to say in terms of topics for community boards, I know that you're working on census, you're working on charter. I don't know if Jim's still here, but let me tell you what the charter issue in terms of another task force is, that because of the vote in Albany, the early voting pushes the charter a month back. So in other words, they're going to have to be ready a month earlier to present to the November 2019 board. So you're going to have, we need to get more input on this charter situation. So just let you know it has to move fast. In other words, I think it has to be in. Jessica, do you know or you don't know?
It's 30 days earlier than before. So now the charter, the calendar that's on their website, they have to chop a month off that in order to get the.
So I believe it would have to be July instead of August or maybe June. We'll let you know. But we're all talking about this year, 2019. So that's one issue to be aware of. Number two, we were talking about the census. Deputy Borough President Alden Bonilla was the #1 census director in 2000, and so he actually came in highest in the United States in terms of Washington Heights. So we have a real advantage. Yeah. So if you need him to come to talk, it's great to have the city. But if you need him to come and talk to your census subcommittees, he would be excellent. Wonderful. We are going to be in about a month announcing our committee. Alden can give you more information. We'll take the information from Providence, Rhode Island, and then we'll have a committee, and all the community boards will be part of it. So just so you know. The other issue is congestion pricing. Now, I hate to say it, another task force. You know, you hear about Brooklyn, Queens being upset. Holy mackerel, are you going to see Manhattan people upset? I happen to support it, but I can tell you 60th Street, I parked my car on 59th Street, Gail. I don't want to pay to go to 60th Street, etc. 110th Street is going to complain like crazy. So you better have a task force, because we need to say as Manhattanites, this is what we want to do. And I don't know what we want to do, but you cannot imagine the calls you're gonna get when people realize this is happening. Because I got them when I voted for it in the city council. I couldn't even pick up the phone. The other couple of things. I want to just commend, there is a new, this is a school issue. Her name is, she's the executive superintendent. In other words, she's in charge of all 6 superintendents in the borough of Manhattan. Her last name is Rosales. She is phenomenal, and she is meeting almost monthly with all the borough, all the superintendents, and all the CECs. It's really impressive. So again, it's something that if you're working on schools, this particular superintendent, it's excellent. So she has really trying to figure out all the ways in which we can improve the schools without getting into all the specifics. So I go, because I hear about the meetings and I show up. And yesterday the chancellor showed up, and this is a follow-up with those who talked about social workers. So I asked him about social workers because I want a social worker in every school. Turns out that the governor, apparently, I didn't know, has put money into the budget for social workers in the schools. Who knew? So I'm just saying that this is something, I swear that if we have social workers in every school, we will have a much better situation. Now, how does Manhattan get this money? We will work on it, but I just wanted you to be aware that this issue is what I need. And then Harlem, 50% of the kids now go to charter schools. Now I have to be good. There's only one charter school I hate, and I think you all know which one it is. I really hate it. But it shouldn't be 50% going to charter schools, right? It should be more, and many of the public schools are under-enrolled. So we need to work on this. Social workers would help. So the other thing that would help is after-school programs. A lot of the elementary schools don't have them. If there are resolutions about social workers or after-school, we can give you some wording if you want. Then that would be helpful for us.
Please.
Much thanks in terms of community board. Alden can be more specific. I assume you have it, but Alden has done a phenomenal job of all the training sessions that are coming up. They're quickly getting enrolled. So you should, you want to add anything to that?
Everybody's gotten information on the community board leadership development training series, right?
Yes.
Over 15 trainings in the next month. And we're going to very quietly train about 1,000 people in a month. On
No
land
other
use,
borough is
parliamentary
doing this. I want you to be clear.
budgets, open data mapping.
They're gonna be fantastic.
They're going to be insane. Insanely fantastic.
The new one on transportation.
Yes, the new one on transportation. That's going to be good.
But I'm
Hopefully it's
just
not
saying,
closed yet.
no other borough's doing this. I want to give Alden Bonilla a lot of credit. It's also what's absolutely necessary. You probably have some CEC members, hopefully 2, and maybe some SWAB members also.
Yeah.
Yesterday we had a hearing. I want to thank the City Council on the nutrition issue. I had no idea it would be of interest. This is the issue of when you are in a school and you have, what is the data for what is considered nutritious, and also who's providing it, what kind of teachers, what kind of professional credentials do they have, is it a garden visit to a community garden considered a nutritious classroom? Is it many, many visits to the hydroponics lab in your class, in your actual building, etc.? No data. So we want to do that. There are other bills. I couldn't believe the interest in this topic. So there is a lot of interest. In terms of funding, the capital money is due in terms of applications February 9th. It's on our website. We need applications from every school. I cannot stand it when a school says, I didn't apply, and I said, well, then you don't get any money. You have, every school, I think between all of us, we work really hard to try to get them in, as well as everything else, but the schools in particular. We also have some cultural funding, whoever's here from budget, that's due on Friday. This is for nonprofits that are working on mostly cultural / tourism. Anything that is really cultural can also be applied to tourism, to be blunt about it. In terms of groups that we're working on, task forces, obviously Rikers and the issue with what that building will look like. I don't know if we want to also do a hearing in Uptown, because there's 2 issues. There's the building, which to be honest with you is so much more controversial than reducing the population. But working with Board 9 if you want, or however you decide, if you wanted to have a hearing with some of the people who are from the mayor's office, up to you, but it might be of interest. I know Brian Benjamin has some interest in that. No, with Councilmember Chin, NoHo Soho, we are working with the community about what that community should look like in the future without getting into all the specifics. We'll also have a retail task force. To the credit of the City Council, there is a push. I don't know if the Small Jobs Act is going to pass or not. I don't think in its current form. But what in the world are we going to have? So we have a task force that's hopefully giving some input. At the same time, I do think we will pass a bill here that says every single vacancy has to be registered for a retail. At least gives us data. We have no data now. And then the mayor talked about going to Albany. I don't know if it'll work or not for a vacancy tax. It's very controversial. And they don't like him in Albany, so I don't know how that's going to go. With the South Street Seaport, we're pushing for that museum. It is so frustrating to me that there is not a final resolution on the South Street Museum. It is the oldest part of our city. Without getting into all the specifics, we are pushing hard. Same thing with the Garment Center, Ward 4. Thank you so much. It's challenging. We're trying to get a building. We're trying to get more owners signed up, but we have had a completely different position from 3 years ago. I don't know if EDC is still here, but it was like, Gail, go away. The Garment Center is going to Sunset Park. Now it's staying, and the $25 million that was going to go to Sunset Park is staying right here in Manhattan. So there's lots of light in the tunnel. We have some events coming up. We have a lot, as you heard, in our office in Harlem, and certainly working with Board 10. This weekend we are doing the Women's March. I'm doing both of them. God help us. So one, we're going to meet, if anybody wants, at 61st and Broadway at 10 o'clock in the morning to do the march, and then I'll also go down to Union Square. If it snows and rains, no problem. I don't mind it. Yeah, 61st and Broadway at 10 o'clock. We will meet as a group. Anybody wants to join us, hundreds and hundreds of people have already signed up for our group, but everybody's welcome, and then we'll somehow get to the other march also. I want to thank the Two Bridges folks. We are, I think, as Margaret Chin mentioned, next Friday, I believe, is a hearing which will determine whether or not we are going to be ULURPed or not. This is a huge issue. And then finally, February 24th at 1 o'clock at New York University is our State of the Borough. It's going to be on urban issues generally, and lots of speakers and panel. The less I speak, the better, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to have a presentation now. This is going to be the best 10 minutes of your life. You have to stay these 10 minutes. Yeah. I preface this presentation by saying that on January 1st, Jubelkis Paulino of 179th Street was murdered by her estranged partner on New Year's Day. It was a murder-suicide. And then left behind two daughters, a 27-year-old and a 22-year-old, the 27 of which who lived in her apartment, who has a 9-month-old baby. Buried her mom on the 3rd, and about the 7th or 8th, the landlord did not accept a check from her because her name was not on the lease, because she's 27. It was on the lease until she was 18 years of age. Faced with, just having buried her mom, so that's the issues that we're confronting in many ways. There's legal issues there of succession, of housing, not being homeless, a 9-month-old daughter, domestic violence, living in the home where your mom was murdered, and then there's all the other issues. But I know that one of the organizations that was vitally important to helping this individual, and many others, countless others, hundreds, too many others, in fact, is Safe Horizons. So we have a presentation now. So if you can, please stay and hear this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for raising that story. I mean, it really highlights just all of the really sort of complicated and intersectional issues that our clients face on a regular basis, so thank you for raising that. So I'm going to pass around, and I promise we'll be efficient and brief, I'm going to pass around a list of our Manhattan-based programs for folks. There might not be enough copies, but we can make sure that everyone gets an electronic copy, plus the slides after our presentation. I can do it. Thank you. So thank you so much for having us this morning. My name is Nora Moran. I'm a Policy Director for Government Affairs at Safe Horizon. And I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
My name is Carmen Fleming. I'm one of the CVAT managers in Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights, and East Harlem.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Farrelly. I'm a CVAT manager in Lower Manhattan. And I apologize for my voice. I'll try to speak loudly.
And so we're here today to talk about one of Safe Horizon's newest programs, which is the Crime Victim Assistance Program. As of, I think, August 2018, we're officially citywide, where we have crime victim advocates in every police precinct and police service area in the city. So we're coming out to all the borough boards just to let them know that we're citywide. This is a resource for folks in your community, and take any questions that you have. Just to talk very quickly about who we are, Safe Horizon is the largest victim assistance agency in the country. We provide client-centered, trauma-informed supportive services to all victims of crime. We primarily work with victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. But now through CVAP, we're expanded our work to really be able to serve anybody who's been the victim of a crime. We do a lot of community outreach, education, advocacy, a lot of partnerships with different organizations, whether it's CBOs, the NYPD, courts. So our work is really made possible by the partnerships that we have with groups across the city. How does it go next? Can I do this? Will that work?
I'll do it.
Okay, sorry.
Just keep talking.
I'll keep going. So, and we'll do things like, in terms of the services we provide, helping people with orders of protection, safety planning, lock changes, seeking, emergency shelter, things like that. So, lots of different supports. We're a resource for you in your neighborhoods. And I'm going to turn it over to Carmen and Nicole to talk a little bit about CVAP.
Go ahead.
So the Crime Victim Assistance Program, as we normally refer to as CVAP, started about 2.5 years ago, and we rolled out in, I think, probably about 20 precincts throughout the city. The following year some more, and now, as of recent, we're in every single precinct and PSA throughout all of the boroughs. In almost every precinct we have 2 advocates, one who serves as a domestic violence victim advocate and one who does general crime. And so what that means is they'll receive all of the police reports that have been filed, and we do outreach, advocacy, providing resources, doing safety planning with victims. It can go anywhere from harassment to assault, domestic violence, burglary. So we really deal with a very wide range of crimes, and providing kind of the social services in partnership with the NYPD. So bringing in that different aspect and working in partnership with them.
And what's really cool about CVAP is that we very, very rarely have our own office, which can have its own challenges, but we're also right alongside the officers. So we're often in the domestic violence unit, we're in the community affairs unit. So really the advocates have the opportunity to build that relationship with the officers, and slowly with time we've seen, even after a year or 2 of being in the precincts, the officers really get to know the advocates and see the value that they can offer, that the police maybe haven't been trained on as much, or don't have the experience or the time, or they have different priorities than we do. So like Nicole said, we get every report. There are a few crimes that we don't, because of, for example, rape shield laws, we don't receive the reports of rape victims, but we do, if they reach out to us, we do reach out to them. But otherwise, we reach out to anyone from someone whose wallet was stolen to someone who was a victim of a serious assault. So that really every single person who has filed a police report is going to receive a call from one of our advocates. We hope is going to really change the way that the criminal justice system affects victims over time. And besides reaching out to victims of crime and safety planning with them, one of the other things that we do is community presentations alongside the NYPD, and also small trainings with NYPD. So during their roll calls, when they do attendance, we provide 2 to 3 minutes on elder abuse, sex trafficking, our role as advocates to remind them, our different organizations.
And just one other thing I'd say, we have many staff now under this program, maybe
180.
Yeah. And so we do a lot of work to make sure that they're really well trained, because they're seeing many different things, on a daily basis. So we have partnerships with different organizations who will come in and train our advocates on
elder abuse. We work with the Weinberg Center to understand, you know, what does that look like? What's something that an advocate might be able to spot, or what should they know? We work with the Anti-Violence Project to understand ways to partner with LGBT victims of crime and what that might look like. So really, you know, making sure, and here's our training list, you know, what child abuse and understanding mandated reporting laws around child abuse, because that, you know, looks different obviously than working with an adult. So we're really trying to make sure that advocates are prepared, and then they get, you know, support from their managers, and, you know, lots of different folks from Safe Rising kind of checking in. That's pretty much it. We'll take questions if folks have
I have
any.
one suggestion or question, and I think the community boards would be supportive of this, which is obviously there's, you know, questions of personal privilege and not divulging any personal information, but could you, you know, help the community boards if there is a particular issue in an area that is prevalent, then maybe the community boards would figure out how to solve it, so you don't continue to have it, because that's not necessarily the police's job. They are going to respond, but you know, there could be some situation where that is not being addressed in a way that you feel, etc. But you have to be able to give us the information in a way that is appropriate, and also where the community boards could in fact respond. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that, but we want to know how we can work with you, but we also want to solve the problems. I don't know if anybody has any comments about that. Yeah, Roberta?
Well, if, you know, if there was like a location or you know, if there tended to be crime against seniors, and the seniors tended to be in one building, that would be really helpful.
Okay, that's good to know.
And we go alongside the NYPD has their own community outreach that they have to do, and they go to senior homes and community centers.
That's a different thing. They do afterwards, or they don't do that deep dive on what exactly is the issue here.
Yeah, and what I was gonna say also was that we go with NYPD, but we also accept the invitations of organizations. We go to community council meetings. I mean, any invitation to speak to a community of people or an organization about our program and see how we can work better. Our advocates and us as managers, we're always happy to accept those invitations.
We've recently been making connections between public safety committees on different community boards and their local advocates, so they have a direct line to each other. So I have cards if anybody wants, we can help facilitate that for you all.
Should we contact a local advocate to come into a quality advice meeting, or one of you folks?
Yeah.
What's the best way?
Yeah, so if you had an interest in, you know, an advocate kind of speaking to, so for instance, I know you brought up, you know, the elder community, in certain areas where there is more of a population, we'll do outreach events where, you know, in the 19th Precinct Command, for instance, there's a lot of fraud, scams, stuff like that, and so we'll go and do presentations on ways to best kind of prepare yourself and defend yourself from those things happening. And so if you had a problem or like a common theme and you wanted someone to come and speak to that, you could definitely reach out to your local precinct or that area and ask if an advocate might be able to do a community outreach event around that.
So that packet that I gave out, and if everybody doesn't have one, we'll definitely email it, has the phone number for your crime victim advocate and your domestic violence victim advocate. It's also on our website, safehorizon.org, organized by precinct. Yes.
We have a major domestic violence coordinator at the Manhattan DA in our building. So what is your relationship with the district attorney in terms of their program?
We have a very close relationship. We actually have a training there tomorrow to train our advocates on the criminal justice system. And we also partner with, we have another Safe Horizon program called the Child Trauma Response Team program that works with victims who are in homes of domestic violence. And I'm actually on my way to the Washington Heights DA's office right after this. We have bi-monthly meetings where we meet with NYPD, the District Attorney's Office, and Safe Horizon, and we discuss more serious cases of domestic violence.
So do stop by our office.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay. Yeah, we will.
Right. Anything else? I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Yeah. Second.
All in favor? Aye, no abstention, no just. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Thank you.